I caught my wife planning to cheat with her friend's help. I moved our savings, filed for divorce, and refused to be her backup plan. Hello Reddit. Never imagined I'd be posting here, but life has a strange sense of humor. I'm 34 and work in industrial equipment sales. Consider conveyor belts and packaging machines, the exciting equipment that keeps warehouses operating. I've been with my employer for 8 years and worked my way up from inside sales to regional manager. My wife Laura, 32F, is a part-time yoga instructor who occasionally does freelance graphic design. We've been married 3 years and together for 6. We met at a brewery on trivia night. She was on the team that beat mine because, evidently, I am bad at 2000s pop culture trivia questions. Who knew? We acquired a robust prenup since I had seen too many of my co-workers' finances wrecked in divorces, and Laura was surprisingly okay about it. She stated she understood our need to protect what we each brought into the marriage. Laura has been driving a 2019 that has been experiencing transmission troubles for months. Not catastrophic failure, but the kind of sporadic issues that make you wonder if this is the day you'll take an Uber to work. She had been hinting that she wanted something newer and more reliable. She started being more explicit about 2 months ago. They showed me listings for a certified pre-owned Subaru Outback. Nothing outrageously costly, roughly $28,000. The problem was that we didn't have that much cash on hand because we'd been aggressively paying off my student loans and mortgage. But I thought she deserved something reliable. I could work some overtime to make it happen. So I started accepting any overtime opportunity, weekends, evening calls, and covering for coworkers. For nearly 2 months, I worked 65 to 70-hour weeks and saved every extra penny in what I termed the car fund. Laura appeared to understand. She stated she admired how hard I worked. Rachel, her best friend, would come over to keep her company when I was working late. I am divorced, work for a healthcare startup, and have always been cool. They'd have wine evenings, watch their shows, and do whatever they wanted. Last Tuesday I completed a site visit early. What should have taken 3 hours took only 20 minutes. I arrived home around 7:30 p.m., rather than my normal 10 p.m. I heard Laura and Rachel's voices in the kitchen. That's when I heard Rachel mention time, and Laura respond that she had to be careful about when she made her move. At first, I assumed they were organizing a surprise or work project. Laura then mentioned that she had been thinking about it a lot lately, especially with me working overtime, and that this would be the perfect moment to see what else was out there. Rachel agreed. Laura deserved to investigate her alternatives, he said. She even volunteered to help with the logistics. Laura was concerned about the financial repercussions, but Rachel told her that she could always return to her current arrangement if the new thing didn't work out. That I'd probably accept her back because I'm too polite for my own good. That's when my blood turned cold. This was not a birthday party plan. It was about my wife preparing to cheat and using our marriage as a backup plan. I discreetly departed, sat in my truck for 10 minutes, and then drove for an hour. I returned home and resumed my normal behavior. Laura hinted throughout the next few days that individuals needed space, that they loved one another but wanted to explore other connections. Subtle, right? She eventually had the talk on Friday night, saying we might have married too early. We were 28 and 31. She loved me but wasn't sure if she was in love. I suggested staying at Rachel's for a while. If we were meant to be, we'd make our way back. I asked whether there was anyone else. She said, "Of course not. She'd never do it to me. She simply needed to be alone and figure herself out." Rachel had offered to let her rest at her house, and perhaps they could take a short vacation somewhere to clear her mind. So I answered, "Okay, if that's what she needed, I understand." I'd keep working, saving money, and giving her all the time she needed to figure things out. What I didn't tell her was that I had already called a divorce attorney Thursday morning. Laura moved out on Sunday, taking her clothing, laptop, books and other necessities for a temporary separation, hugged me at the door, and expressed her hope that we might work things out. That this was not always the end, but rather a stop to gather clarity. Monday morning, I went to the bank and transferred all of our savings, including the $12,000 vehicle fund I had been building, to a new account in my name only. Thanks to our prenup, I was well within my rights. Her name was not on my work accounts, and I left the joint bank account alone save for transferring my direct deposit. Tuesday I had the divorce paperwork prepared. Nothing malicious, just a straightforward dissolution based on irreconcilable differences. It's very clean now, thanks to the prenup. We all keep what we brought in. If we sell the house, we will split the proceeds. There is no alimony. Laura texted me on Wednesday, asking if I had any ideas about us and if I was ready to have a serious chat about improving on our relationship. I responded that I had a lot of views and was definitely ready for a chat. Could she come on Thursday evening? She seems excited. She stated that she had also been thinking about our future and was ready to discuss it. Thursday evening, she arrived with takeaway and began discussing how her time away had made her realize how much she missed our life together. Maybe she was overthinking things, and sometimes you just need to take a step back to appreciate what you have. That was when I gave her the divorce papers. I've never seen a face transform so quickly. She moved from nervous and delighted to puzzled and angry and within 15 seconds. I started wondering what this was supposed to mean, if it was a joke, and why I was being so theatrical about her wanting some space. I told her I understood precisely what kind of space she was seeking for, and I had decided to offer her all the space in the world indefinitely. She demanded to know what I was talking about. So I mentioned that I had overheard her chat with Rachel the previous Tuesday. Not everything, because I didn't stay for the entire planning session, but enough to grasp she was preparing to cheat and expected me to be waiting here like a loyal golden retriever once she had exhausted her alternatives. The expression on her face said everything I needed to know. She tried to pretend that I had misunderstood, taken things out of context, and that she had never done anything. I thought that was fantastic since it meant the divorce would be even smoother. There were no issues from infidelity, simply two people who sought different things. Then she spoke about money, specifically whether she could use the savings account to get her own house and possibly purchase a reliable automobile since she'd be starting over. I told her that the savings account had been closed. The money I'd earned working overtime for the preceding 2 months was now in an account she couldn't access since, ironically, I decided not to fund her exploration phase after all. That's when she became quite angry. She claimed I was being controlling and that denying her access to money she relied on was financial abuse. I reminded her that according to our prenup, the money I made was mine, and she had never contributed to the car fund she had planned to spend for her independence trip. She left about 9 p.m. She's taking her supper with her. So, Reddit, Ida. A part of me wonders if I should have addressed her with the overheard chat first, given her the opportunity to explain, or called it off. Maybe I misunderstood and she was just going through a quarter-life crisis unrelated to adultery. But, honestly, the more I think about it, the more certain I am that I heard exactly what I believe I did. I'm not out to ruin her life or leave her bankrupt. She's got a job. She can stay with Rachel, and she is an adult capable of arranging her own transportation and housing. I just don't see why I should pay for her self-discovery adventure, especially since it appears to involve examining other people's mattresses. But perhaps I'm being overly severe. Maybe I should have attempted to work it out. Let me know your thoughts, Reddit. I have some decisions to make about next moves. A few days later, an update was posted. So Reddit, you had some thoughts. And by some thoughts, I mean my inbox overflowed like a packaging line during the peak holiday season. The general consensus seems to be that I was NTA, and that I should quit second-guessing myself about what I had heard. A number of you noted that Laura's reaction when I handed her the divorce papers essentially proved everything. If she had been innocent, she would have been confused and hurt, rather than instantly concerned about money and requesting access to accounts. That struck home. An innocent individual would have been saddened by divorce papers without considering their financial choices. Several individuals urged that I document everything and try to get further evidence, but I'm not interested in playing private investigator. I heard exactly what I heard. Her reaction proved this. And I am not going to start following her around with a camera or examining her phone records. That is not the type of person I want to be. Some of you cautioned me that Laura would most likely respond with tears and promises once she understood I was serious. It turns out Reddit has prophetic powers, because that is exactly what happened. Laura arrived at my residence at 6:30 a.m. on Friday, one day after I served her papers. I was getting ready for work when I heard someone beating on the door, as if they wanted to wake up the entire neighborhood. She really wanted to talk this time. No games, no drama. She revealed that she had been considering other possibilities, but seeing the divorce papers made her realize she was afraid of commitment and didn't want anybody else, that I was the best thing that ever happened to her, and that she'd been an idiot. I told her I appreciated her honesty, but the ship had departed. If she wanted to improve our marriage, she might have done so before organizing her affair with Rachel. Not with Rachel, but with Rachel's help. That's when things became interesting. She claimed Rachel had been filling her mind with thoughts about how she was settling and deserved to discover what else was available. Rachel was furious about her own divorce and projected it onto Laura's marriage. Laura would never have gone through with anything if I hadn't jumped right into divorce. Was there a specific someone she'd been planning to explore with, or was this more of a general shopping expedition? I inquired. She was quiet for a long time, then confessed there was a guy from her yoga studio who'd been flirting with her for months. Nothing had happened, But she was curious what it would be like. Rachel had been pressing her to find out, telling her that life was too short to spend wondering what if forever. So, there it was. She had a particular goal in mind, rather than just theoretical exploration. I congratulated her for finally being honest, but told her it didn't alter anything. She began crying and asked if we could attempt counseling, maybe work through this together, because tossing away 6 years was insane. But Reddit, here's something numerous of you mentioned that really resonated with me. She was not sorry she had planned to cheat. She was sorry she was caught. If I hadn't caught the chat, she would have gone ahead with her plan and expected me to be here waiting after she finished sampling the items. I told her I'd think about it, partly to persuade her to leave so I could go to work, but I'd already decided. Another issue happened over the weekend, and this is where some of your advice came in handy. Laura attempted to enter our joint checking account and discovered that I had changed my direct deposit. She contacted me Saturday morning and asked about it, and I explained that because we were getting divorced, it made logical to completely separate our funds. She became agitated and stated that she needed money for basic necessities and that she couldn't live just on her yoga revenue. I informed her that, according to the prenup, we were each responsible for our own expenses during the separation process. She might work longer hours, take on additional graphic design clients, or find another alternative. Several of you had advised me to be prepared for her to say she couldn't support herself and required spousal support, so I was prepared for the conversation. This turned out to be good counsel. Rachel contacted me on Monday morning. This was the first time we had spoken since the whole affair began. She wanted me to know that Laura was truly hurting, and that maybe I was being too harsh. Laura had made a mistake, but she didn't deserve to have her entire life ruined because of it. I asked Rachel if she believed I deserved to have my entire life blown up because of Laura's error. If she believed I should have quietly sponsored Laura's affair and patiently waited for her to decide whether she wanted to keep me or trade me in. Rachel became quiet, then said that she hadn't realized I'd overheard their chat and that she might have given Laura inappropriate advice. I told Rachel that Laura was an adult who made her own decisions, and that if she was having trouble right now, she could work out her own solutions. I was no longer her backup plan or safety net. Rachel attempted to claim that Laura never actually did anything, that thinking about something and doing it were two distinct things. I showed out that preparing something and accomplishing it were not that different. If I hadn't found out, Laura would have carried out her plan. The talk ended abruptly after that. So, Reddit, following your counsel, I'm keeping the course. There will be no reconciliation conversations, counseling, or, let's work this out together. I'm proceeding with the divorce and letting Laura sort out her own life. Several folks inquired if I felt awful about serving her papers exactly when she was coming back to work things out. Honestly, no. She did not return, because she realized she loved me. She returned because whatever she thought she wanted didn't work out, and I was the safe alternative. That's not love, it's convenience. My next update will most likely come after I hear back from my lawyer about the timetable and next actions. Thank you for all the reality checks, Reddit. It's been good to have outside viewpoints. Update 2. Reddit. You gorgeous disaster of a community. Your advice remains shockingly accurate. Remember how you predicted Laura's escalation when she realized the polite approach wasn't working? Well, you'll see. Monday started as usual enough. If you can call this a normal circumstance. I was catching up on work that I had neglected amid the domestic drama when I received a call from my HR department. Someone had called them, alleging I was going through a difficult divorce and might be emotionally unstable at work. Now that Reddit knows I work in industrial equipment sales, my clients are warehouse managers, operations directors, and other practical individuals who are more concerned with whether their conveyor belts operate than with my personal life. But HR must take these issues seriously. So I had to sit through a somewhat awkward chat regarding my emotional state and whether I needed time off or therapy services. I briefly stated the scenario. Divorce proceedings are handled by lawyers, and there is no impact on job performance. My manager backed me up, pointing out that my numbers had been better than usual. Overtime apparently pays off. But it was still embarrassing. It took me approximately 30 seconds to figure out where the call came from. Laura texted me on Tuesday, wondering if we could meet to talk logistics. I consented against my better judgment, and most likely against Reddit's recommendations. We figured we needed to iron out some practical issues regardless. A big mistake. Laura arrived looking like she'd been living off energy drinks and tension, which could have been the case. She began by apologizing, saying she was sorry about the HR situation, but she was desperate and didn't know how else to gain my attention. I informed her that contacting my workplace was extremely inappropriate and asked her what logistics we needed to discuss that couldn't be handled through lawyers. That's when she dropped the bombshell. She was pregnant. Reddit, I'll spare you the suspense. After about 10 minutes of stress and fast mental math, I concluded the timeline was incorrect. We hadn't been intimate since before she moved out, which was only 3 weeks ago. It was too early for her to know, too early for symptoms to appear, and simply too early for anything. It could have happened a long time ago, but she didn't develop any bumps that I could see. When I brought this up, she became defensive, saying she'd been feeling strange for a while but didn't want to bother me while I was working so much overtime. That she had taken a test that morning, and the results were positive. I asked her if she wanted to go to the doctor with me and confirm it with some kind of test, because this was such crucial news that would change everything about our divorce. She said she wasn't ready for it yet and needed time to digest it, but she wanted me to know that it altered everything, and that we owed it to our child to try to work things out. I told her we'd need medical confirmation before making any significant choices, and that if she was indeed pregnant, we'd work out co-parenting arrangements with the lawyers. Her face fell. I believe she expected me to call off the divorce and hurry back into reconciliation mode. I received a call on Wednesday from a number I did not know. It turned out to be the yoga studio guy Laura had mentioned she was hoping to explore with. He wanted to tell me that he had no idea Laura was married when she was flirting with him, and that when he found out, he completely backed off. Laura had apparently informed him we were separated and getting divorced, but when Laura expressed interest, an acquaintance stated we were still married. He felt awful about the entire situation and wanted to clear the air. I appreciated the call and assured him he had done nothing wrong. Laura had misrepresented our situation, and he did the correct thing by backing off after he saw the truth. But it validated something I'd suspected about Laura's timeline. She'd been building the groundwork with this guy for weeks, possibly months. This was not a sudden loss of faith in our marriage. Laura texted me on Thursday, wondering if I had thought about the pregnancy, and what it meant for us. I replied that I would be pleased to discuss co-parenting once she had received medical confirmation. She quickly called me, upset that I was being cold about our prospective child. I clarified that I wasn't being frigid, but rather sensible. If she was pregnant, we'd handle it appropriately. But I wasn't making decisions based on a home pregnancy test and some vague symptoms. She hung up on me. Friday was the most fascinating day. I returned home from work to discover Laura's car in my driveway and Laura sitting on my porch steps. She appeared to have been waiting for nearly an hour. She said she needed to tell me the truth about everything because she couldn't continue living with the lies. So I sat down to listen. It turns out that the pregnancy was a hoax. She had hoped it would make me reconsider the divorce, but she knew I'd insist on medical confirmation, and the whole thing would come apart. The relationship with the yoga guy was real, but it was more substantial than she had previously revealed. They'd been texting for months, had a few coffee dates, and she'd planned to sleep with him during their trial separation. Rachel had been encouraging the entire process, telling Laura that she deserved to experience what else was out there before settling down forever. But when Laura attempted to make a move, yoga guy backed off since he discovered she was still married. That's when she realized her magnificent idea wasn't going to turn out the way she had hoped. She claimed that receiving the divorce papers served as a wake-up call that she was about to lose the best thing in her life for a ridiculous fantasy, that she'd been watching too many movies and taking too much terrible counsel from Rachel. She asked if I could forgive her and start over. To be honest, watching her so broken down was difficult. This was not the confident woman who had requested room to consider her options. This was someone who realized they had ruined their life for nothing. But you know what? Several of you had warned me about this very scenario, that she'd return with tears and confessions once she realized the repercussions were serious, and that I shouldn't allow transitory remorse overshadow the underlying issue. She was willing to betray me and considered me to be her backup plan. I told her I admired her candor, but it didn't change the issue. She'd made these decisions after months of preparation, not in a moment of weakness, and the only reason she was confessing now was because her plan failed and she was facing actual consequences. She questioned what she should do now, where she should go, and how she could reconstruct her life. I told her they were the things she should have asked herself before blowing up ours. She left about 9 p.m., has not contacted me since. Rachel, however, called me on Saturday morning. Laura had apparently been staying with her and was in a really horrible state. Rachel wanted to know if I was okay with destroying Laura's life or if I would consider giving mercy. I informed Rachel that Laura had destroyed her own life and that I was simply declining to go down with a ship. That if Rachel truly cared about Laura's well-being, she'd assist her in determining how to proceed rather than pressuring me to help. Rachel accused me of being heartless. I stated I was being practical. The conversation did not last long after that. So Reddit, divorce is proceeding. No more fabricated pregnancies or workplace harassment. And I'm apparently the villain for refusing to assume the role of backup husband. Your counsel to stay firm and avoid manipulative tactics was right on. It's been tempting to feel terrible, especially seeing Laura so unhappy. But you were correct. She is not sad because she has injured me. She is upset by the implications of her decisions. Thank you for keeping me calm throughout this, Reddit. Update 3. Reddit, remember how I thought things were calming down? Yeah, that was wonderfully naive of me. Your collective wisdom about Laura not going gently into that good night was once again shockingly correct. This week provided a masterclass in why you should never underestimate someone's ability to solve creative problems when they are up against a wall. It began on Monday when I received a call from my lawyer. Laura had filed a motion claiming that I was hiding assets and requesting temporary spousal support while the divorce was proceeding. According to her filing, I abruptly transferred huge sums of money out our joint accounts, leaving her unable to support herself. My lawyer wasn't concerned. Our prenuptial agreement addresses this exact scenario, and I have confirmation that the money came from my extra job. But it resulted in more legal bills and delays, which I'm beginning to believe was the objective. Tuesday saw an unusual development. My mortgage company called and inquired about my intentions regarding the residence. Someone phoned them, pretending to be representing both parties in the divorce and inquiring about options for one spouse to take full responsibility for the mortgage. That person was not my lawyer. Laura had called them directly, introducing herself as Mrs. Thompson, she never took my last name, and inquiring about the procedures for removing a spouse from the mortgage. She had given them our case number, to which she should not have had access, and attempted to obtain information on refinancing alternatives. The mortgage business was unable to provide her with any information without legal authority, but they wanted to clarify with me that her question was authentic. I had to clarify that my wife was not authorized to conduct inquiries on my behalf, and certainly, she was probably attempting to figure out if she could still claim the house despite our prenuptial agreement. On Wednesday, things got extremely imaginative. I arrived home from work to find my neighbor waiting for me in her front yard. She's a retired teacher, probably in her 70s, and has always been cordial in the neighborly sense, where we talk about the weather and yard work but don't know each other's life stories. Our neighbor wanted to inform me that a young woman had stopped by that afternoon to ask inquiries about me. Had I been having loud arguments recently? Has she ever seen other women come and go? Was I the type of person that appeared controlling or aggressive? The young woman described herself as a social worker making a routine check on a domestic issue. She'd been quite nice and professional, but the neighbor thought the whole situation strange because she'd never noticed any signs of domestic trouble. Our neighbor appears to be sharper than she looks. She'd asked the social worker for identification and business cards, but the woman became evasive and swiftly fled. The neighbor described the woman, and it sounded exactly like Rachel. I thanked the neighbor for the heads up and promptly contacted my lawyer. He stated that while this was technically harassment and that we could file a complaint, it might be more useful to capture everything and use it to explain Laura's actions if she tried to say I was unreasonable. On Thursday, I made the decision to be proactive. I called Rachel personally. Rachel attempted to act innocent at first, claiming she had no idea what I was talking about. When I mentioned the neighbor's description and the social worker's story, Rachel became defensive and said she was only trying to help her buddy. I informed Rachel that impersonating a social worker was potentially unlawful and that contacting my workplace, mortgage company and neighbors was considered harassment, that if she wanted to help Laura, she should encourage her to focus on moving forward rather than attempting to sabotage the divorce. Rachel claimed I was being paranoid and that she had done nothing illegal and that Laura was struggling and only trying to grasp her legal alternatives. I informed him that Laura had hired a lawyer to help her understand her legal choices and that asking neighbors about domestic abuse was not a legal tactic, it was desperation. Rachel hung up on me. Friday marked the weekend's grand finish. This time, I was working late and legally. We had a packaging line emergency at a food processing factory and returned home at 10 p.m. to find my front door slightly open. Reddit. I've seen enough real crime shows to know you don't just stroll into a house and open the door. I contacted the cops from my truck and waited for their arrival. Officers arrived and conducted a walkthrough of the house. There were no traces of forced entry or missing items that they could see, but I discovered something interesting. A pair of keys is on my kitchen counter. It turned out they were Laura's house keys. She had obviously let herself in, glanced about, and then left the keys behind. There is no comment or explanation. Only the keys. The cops inquired whether I wanted to submit a report. I replied, no, not this time, but I wanted it documented that Laura had been in the house without permission and had returned her keys. One of the police inquired whether this was a domestic incident. I gave her a brief version. The officer stated that divorces often cause people to behave in ways that surprise everyone, even themselves. She suggested that I change my locks and consider installing a security camera to protect myself if things progressed further. On Saturday morning, I changed the locks. I spent the afternoon installing a rudimentary doorbell camera system, which will record who comes and goes. Monday morning, I received a call from my lawyer with both good and bad news. Laura's spousal support motion was refused, which is good news. The prenuptial agreement stood up exactly as expected, and the judge was unimpressed with her argument that I was concealing assets. This is bad news. Laura's lawyer had requested an extension, arguing that they needed more time to analyze financial documents, which would result in further delays and legal bills, but probably not enough to influence the final verdict. My lawyer stated this was rather common in contested divorces. Laura was probably buying time, expecting I would become tired of the legal bills and agree to a settlement. He inquired whether I wanted to pursue mediation or if I preferred to see it through to the conclusion. Your advice has been especially useful on Reddit. A few months ago, I might have considered mediation just to get it over with. But you've continually pointed out that giving in to manipulation only fosters more of it. I instructed my lawyer to see it through to the end. So, that is where we stand. Laura appears to have moved on from fake pregnancies and workplace harassment to amateur detective work and break-ins. Rachel is cosplaying as a social worker, and I'm discovering that divorce fosters creativity in individuals you never knew existed. Thank you for keeping me grounded throughout this Reddit. Your counsel to expect escalation and not take it personally has proven more useful than you realize. Without this communal reality check, I might have made myself feel bad about Laura's breakdown or Rachel's harassing campaign.